Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
Welcome to the first episode of Season 4.
This month we read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. It was recommended to us by Jazz on Instagram.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Blake. Blake is a best-selling novelist and screenwriter. He's the author of a dozen novels, most recently Dark Matter, Recursion, and Upgrade, for which he is also writing the movie for Steven Spielberg's Amblin Partners. His international best-selling Wayward Pines trilogy was also adapted into a television series for Fox, which was produced by M. Night Shyamalan, and it was summer of 2015's #1 show. His novel Recursion is currently being developed as a Netflix series by Shonda Rhimes and Matt Reeves, and Skydance is developing a film adaptation of his novella, Summer Frost, based on Crouch's script. His novels have been translated into 40 languages, and his short fiction has appeared in numerous publications, including Ellery Queen, Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine, and Cemetery Dance. At the moment, Crouch is writing a new book, as well as creating a 9-episode adaptation of his novel Dark Matter, the one we read, for Apple TV+. Blake lives in Colorado. Barbara, you want to tell us some specifics about this book?
Yeah, so this was originally published on July 26th of 2016. It is considered a science fiction, thriller, and suspense for these genres, and it is 352 pages. Currently has a 4.1 on Goodreads, 4.6 on Barnes & Noble's, 4.5 on Amazon, and a 4.4 on Audible. And it has been nominated for the Goodreads Choice Award for Science Fiction back in 2016, and the Book of the Month, Book of the Year Award also in 2016. And as of this recording, it hasn't won any awards. We also think it's important for readers to know what, if any, representation is in the books we read. So for this book, there is one POC character, no LGBTQ plus characters, and no characters with disability.
Lauren, you want to give us a little bit of a brief summary?
Sure. So this book is a bit of a mind F, and it is about main character Jason Dessen. It is kind of, I'm just going to go with what's on the back of the book so I don't spoil anything, because I feel like this book is easy to spoil. So, are you happy with your life? Those are the last words Jason Dessen hears before the masked abductor knocks him unconscious. Before he awakens to find himself strapped to a gurney surrounded by strangers in hazmat suits. Before a man Jason's never met smiles down at him and says, "Welcome back, my friend." In this world he's woken up to, Jason's life is not the one he knows. His wife is not his wife, his son was never born, and Jason is not an ordinary college physics professor, but a celebrated genius who has achieved something remarkable, something impossible. Is it this world or the other that's the dream? And even if the home he remembers is real, how can Jason possibly make it back to the family he loves? The answers lie in a journey more wondrous and horrifying than anything he could have imagined. One that will force him to confront the darkest parts of himself, even as he battles a terrifying, seemingly unbeatable foe. Dark Matter is a brilliantly plotted tale that is at once sweeping and intimate, mind-bendingly strange, and profoundly human. A relentlessly surprising science fiction thriller about choices, paths not taken, and how far we will go to claim the lives we dream of.
It's a pretty good summary. So, what did you guys think about Dark Matter? And remember, no
Did
spoilers.
you just say that's a pretty good summary because it's the back of the book?
I know but it is. It's very. It's like, but the way Lauren phrased it, like she was trying to do her own thing, and then I immediately thought the same thing she did, which is this would be a very difficult book to summarize in your own words after reading it. Because
yes.
Without spoiling it.
So easy to trip into.
Without spoiling literally anything, all you can say is it's Jason. He gets knocked in the head, kidnapped essentially, and when he wakes up again, he don't be recognizing nothing.
Right.
That's what I meant. Like it's one of those. It's like super tricky to summarize without tripping into spoiler territory. So
that's why I started, and then I was like,
nope.
I'm just gonna read this.
Because I was like, man, I'm gonna be impressed if she can do this. Then she's like, you know what? I'm gonna go for the back of the book. Anyway, what did you guys think of Dark Matter? And remember, no spoilers.
So I really enjoyed it. I think the concept is really cool, and it definitely, I don't even consider it kind of, a mind F when you really start thinking about it. So I enjoyed theorizing and following the character around. My only issue with the book, and this just happened in the beginning, and so I got over it after a while, was all the succinct sentences. It was really distracting for me, but I just felt it was overused and kind of lost its impact for me. But other than that, I liked it.
So I also really liked it. I love obviously, it's not a shocker, I love science fiction and fantasy. So I was really excited to read this book. I thought it was really well done. I agree with Barbara. It was completely a mind F, and I had no idea. I had no idea what was coming next. It was interesting, even like Barbara, who's our queen of prediction, I think even had some prediction issues with this book because of how twisty it was. So it was very well done. I really liked it. And once I found out after we read it that it's becoming a show on Apple TV Plus that's also written by the author, I'm super excited to check that out too.
Barbara actually didn't really have many issues predicting this book. She texted me way in advance and predicted pretty much the entire thing. She was wrong about like maybe 2 things, but she pretty much nailed it. But anyway,
being wrong about 2 things though, that's a serious like bad move for Barbara. She's usually
I don't know.
Usually 100%.
I was wrong about this whole, like, we'll get into spoilers in a little bit, but I literally could not have been further from what I predicted on what this book was going to be about. But I really, really liked it. So thank you to the person that recommended it, thinking that maybe this would be one sci-fi book that I liked, because you were correct. I did. I enjoyed it. I liked the plot, the characters, all of the twists. I can't spoil it, but this was the first book with a specific plot point that I'll talk about later. That I've never read a book like this before, so we'll get into that later. But it completely blew my mind. Mind F for sure. Had me thinking about it a long time afterwards. Like, and I'll also get into that later once we get into the spoilers. Like, is this my life? Is this a dream? Like, pondering things like way after the fact. Just because it was something that I never even really thought of. So, but yeah, Michael, Barbara definitely. She texted me like. Literally, I think she was on like chapter 2 or something, and she was like, so I want this documented that this is my prediction. And I was like, and I can't say anything. I'm like, just keep reading. Like,
I was like, she's like, I'm not gonna spoil anything for you. I was like, that's fine, I just want proof, a documentation of when I'm thinking through all of this stuff. And I just sent her like paragraphs of like my thoughts, and
she was pretty much right on for all of them. And so I had a hard time not being like, yes, you're correct, because I didn't want to ruin it for her. But she was, it's just, I don't know.
Well, good to know.
She's amazing. I don't know how she does it.
No.
Yeah.
I just have a very niche, like.
Like, I look forward to the episode one day where we read a book that like you can't predict at all.
This is a new challenge for our listeners.
It's as much of a mind F for you as it is for me and Lauren.
This is the new challenge. If somebody can recommend us a book that Barbara can't predict, we'll send you a shirt.
I still think there are certain things that I didn't think about, and I was like, oh, of course, like, why didn't I think about like how that could have happened? So I want to say that.
So obviously we're not going to go into our individual ratings right now. You're going to have to wait till the end for that. But our group score for this one was an 8 out of 10. So knowing that, would you recommend this book? For me, yes, absolutely. It's an easy book to recommend. I think that the person who recommended to us had the right idea. If a lot of times when we read a fantasy book or a sci-fi book, it's hard to recommend those books for people that maybe don't usually read that genre or don't enjoy that genre. But I think this one is truly a book that, as proved by Lauren talking about how much she liked it, can be enjoyed by people outside of those niches. And so, yes, I pretty much recommend this book to everybody.
Are you calling me an outsider?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I recommend it too, especially for people that are like me, who are more into the crime and murder mysteries and like chick lit and other things, and less into these like super deep sci-fi things that these guys like better. So definitely shout out to listener Jazz or however you say it, for recommending this. I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yes, I would also recommend it. I think there's just enough science fiction in it for people who enjoy that, but not crazy enough for people who don't dabble in that genre. Overall, I think a lot of people would enjoy it because I think it has just enough of a little bit of each genre for people to enjoy it and not like really in depth to be like, this is too much for me. So.
All right. For those of you leaving us at this point, don't forget to give us a rating if you like us. Also, make sure you're following us on both Facebook and Instagram at BadassLitPod. We want to hear from you. If you've got a book you want us to read for this show, please let us know. Either leave us a comment or send us a direct message. Now, for a short preview of our next episode. Next month, we are reading The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova, which we are reading to celebrate Latin Heritage Month.
Here's a
Which
preview
was this
for
month.
that one. Yeah, Latin Heritage Month technically
Ended October.
ended October 15th, you said?
Yeah.
We're reading it in post.
We technically read it already in October. We read it. It was just we
Yes.
didn't do the podcast over it.
There we go.
It still counts.
So here's that preview. The Montoyas are used to a life without explanations. They know better than to ask why the pantry never seems to run low or empty, or why their matriarch won't ever leave their home in Four Rivers, even for graduations, weddings, or baptisms. But when Orquídea Divina invites them to her funeral and to collect their inheritance, they hope to learn the secrets that she has held on to so tightly their whole lives. Instead, Orquídea is transformed, leaving them with more questions than answers. 7 years later, her gifts have manifested in different ways for Marimar, Ray, and Tatanelli's daughter, Rhiannon, granting them unexpected blessings. But soon a hidden figure begins to tear through their family tree, picking them off one by one as it seeks to destroy Orquídea's line. Determined to save what's left of their family and to uncover the truth behind their inheritance, the four descendants travel to Ecuador, to the place where Orquídea buried her secrets and broken promises and never looked back. Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Beam, beam, beam.
Remember, the second part of this episode is going to be an in-depth look at the book Dark Matter. So if you do want to read it, and I seriously say that this time because there's so many spoilers in this one, stop listening now and then come back and listen to the rest of our review once you're done.
Hey, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Claire. We're the hosts of Fictional Hangover Podcast.
Fictional Hangover is a podcast about young adult and new adult books, series, authors, and voice actors that is full of spoilers.
New episodes are released every Wednesday. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on fictionalhangover.com.
Remember, the only cure for a fictional hangover is another book. Now, back to the episode.
Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. So, like always, our first question, and we're going to talk about who gets the Badass Character Award for this book. Barbara, who is your nominee?
I think this is the first time I've had trouble with because I really don't know if there is one because I don't know. I just don't know if there is one. I'd say maybe Amanda if I had to pick, just because she left her universe to save someone she really didn't know that well and kind of went into the unknown without any reason, just because she's a good human. So I would say that would be my badass award. Besides that, we only follow one other person really, Jason, and so I don't know. I don't even know if I have one for this one. But if I had to, I guess it would maybe be Amanda.
So it's interesting you chose Amanda, because I hadn't really thought about that until you just said it, but it's a pretty solid choice. This book is so centered on Jason. Let's say Jason. I think that's probably the obvious choice. I'll nominate Jason number 2. No, I'm just kidding. I think I'll pick Jason. I think that the Jason that we meet at the beginning of the book he goes through a lot of things to get back to his family in the course of the book. So I think that...
Yeah, but so do the other 8 Jasons. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's hard to pick him because there's so many of him.
You can just do what I did and say all of the Jasons to cover all of your bases.
So you can't do that, though. I think I have to say all of the Jasons except Jason number 2.
I just put OG Jason because he was my favorite character, as far as, like, I felt like he was the only one out of all of them that had, like, genuine, I don't know, like, and we're seeing it from his perspective too, so, like, it's hard to say, but his intentions and his, like, I don't know, his thoughts and, like, his goals and things that he was doing seemed more genuine and, like, more like he was in the best interest of his family than some of the other ones where they were just more, like, selfishly going after it.
Yeah, but we didn't meet some of them. What about the other Jason that allowed him to pass and told the other Jasons, like, hey, let him be and stuff? Like, that's what I'm saying. It's hard to pick because we have an investment in this Jason because he's the one that we followed.
Well, and that's why I picked him, because we're invested in him.
That's why I picked Amanda, because I feel like she has no horse in this race. Like, she didn't have to do what she did, and she essentially saved his life in doing that.
I'm going to go with OG Jason then.
Your sister already explained her, so OG Jason wins.
OG Jason wins.
OG Jason for the win.
And if you're still listening at this point, you haven't read the book and have no idea why the hell we're talking about multiple Jasons.
Like, what?
You-
Sucks to suck.
Let's talk about the characters a little bit. So, first character we'll talk about is the OG Jason. And since Lauren had lots of opinions about all the Jasons, Lauren, why don't you tell us a little bit about OG Jason?
So OG Jason is the one that gets knocked unconscious at the beginning of the book and wakes up to, like, friggin' spoiler alert, himself abducting him. And he then finds out later that because he's like a physics professor in the life that he knows. And then, like, he wakes up in this place, this like science place that he created apparently. And, another version of him made it possible to essentially, like, have a multiverse. And so he, I guess, in his normal life that he remembers, didn't think it was possible for anybody to do what he ultimately did. And he finds out that one version of himself did that. And how's he going to get back to his life? Because he's got his wife and his kid. And he ultimately realized that he didn't want this science career life that a version of him ended up living. And so he really is just kind of centered around getting back to his original life, and goes through quite the adventure to get there.
Let's see, Daniela is next, which is Jason's wife in the original universe. Barbara, you want to tell us a little bit about Daniela?
She is an artist. In his world, they have a child together quite young and early in their relationship. And that was, I feel like, the start of the split as far as where Jason 1's life went one way and Jason 2's life went the other. And essentially, this is so hard to explain, but in this universe is Daniela. She doesn't pursue her art career. She's an art teacher and obviously helps Jason raise Charlie. She is from Spain, or she is of Hispanic descent. I believe is Spanish.
I think that's what they say, yeah.
Yeah, and that's that version of her. We obviously meet like different versions of her from the different universes that he ends up running through. But the OG Daniela is that one. And she doesn't obviously realize what's going on until Jason OG goes and tells her, which is kind of a mind F for her too, that poor woman.
Well, and then like multiple other Jasons are trying to convince her that OG Jason is lying. It's just the whole thing is just like
trip. That's what I'm saying. It's very trippy when you really start thinking about it.
You gotta read this one in order to understand what we're gonna talk about, because
if not, you're gonna be hella confused.
You're gonna be like,
really, like you said though, Barbara, that like Jason 2 and Daniela 2 are pretty much like the polar opposite of what they are in the one. Because it's like that, like you said, that's that single split. Like in the second universe, she's a super successful artist. They're not together, and she had an abortion and never had Charlie. Whereas, the book gives you a lot to think about when it comes to the multiverse and multiversal ideas and that theory. And it does it in a really good job explaining it, I thought. Anyway, we'll get to that some more later. So Charlie's the next character. Not a lot to talk about with Charlie. Charlie is Jason and Daniela's son. He's 15 years old. He's kind of in the angsty teenager phase, but we don't hear a whole lot about Charlie. We get like the gist of like how their family dynamic is at the beginning of the book. And then we get little bits and pieces of Charlie as we flash back and forth between Jason 1 and Jason 2, since Jason 2 is pretending to be Jason 1. And so you see how Charlie interacts with that. But Charlie's just a normal high school kid, just trying to do his thing. And he plays a much bigger role at the end of the book, which we'll talk about later in the podcast. But that's the gist of Charlie.
Yeah, his character doesn't really get fleshed out that much.
Mm-hmm.
No, not really.
Daniela definitely gets more like quote unquote screen time than he does.
Yeah.
It's also because he doesn't exist in one of the universes though too. So
in a few universes, he doesn't exist. Yeah. In any universe that they don't end up together, obviously.
Right.
He's not there.
Nope. Let's see. Next on the list is Jason 2. Which one of you wants to talk about the doppelganger?
Jason 2 is basically like an evil version of Jason. And
I don't know. I don't know if it's fair to say an
he
evil
is.
version.
He is. He's trying to
He's
steal his
the
life.
villain of Jason 1's story, but
True.
he's the main
Yes.
character of his own story.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're all the main character of our own stories, aren't we?
No, sometimes I feel like I'm second best.
What I meant with that, Lawrence, I don't think it's fair to say he's evil because, like, if you look at like the reasons that he did the things he did, it's not like
He's the one who so he regrets his decision of not being with Daniela, makes the whole multi-universe box thing to go and live what he like his biggest regret in life. This is essentially a book about decisions and regrets and what if you had done this versus this, and you get to see that. And that's
I'm
Jason
saying he's
too.
evil in the sense that, like, look, you made your choice, pal.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
and
true.
then you're gonna go and screw up this other family that's happy, and even though he knows what he's doing, like, he knows that he's like tearing this apart and like they might never be the same again. He's like, it's just, he's selfish.
He's selfish. I wouldn't say evil. He's this very selfish character, unlike Jason 1, who's very selfless.
I misspoke. He's a selfish asshole, but he's not evil.
Yeah.
I think that the dichotomy between Jason and Jason 2 also gives you a really good like perspective, and it kind of takes a little bit of a look at like the value of happiness and that money doesn't equal happiness, since Jason 2 is like super rich and super successful and can have any woman he chooses if he feels like it. And even though he has all that stuff, the biggest regret of his life is that he didn't stay with Daniela.
It's also it's one of those things. It's really interesting to see how you as a person, other things shape how you become. Because obviously Jason 1 and Jason 2 are literally the same person.
Up until that point.
But they are so different in how they see life and how they react to things and how they think about things. It's like a completely different person, you know? So it's like I said, it's a mind F, and I love thinking like that kind of stuff. Like, what things in your life have shaped you to become who you are? Anyways.
Well, based on the theory, wouldn't they have like literally been the same person up until that decision that split the timeline?
Correct. All of the Jasons are literally the same person, except for one day. So, you know, like you're seeing the linear path, and it's like the multiverse theory where one decision branches out. So it's the river, you know, where every like little thing that you do branches out to a new little river. Arm, I think it's called, or whatever a river thing is called. So that's what you're seeing. Like, all these Jasons are the same, but there's slight variations, or some of them obviously are huge variations of them.
It's a mind F to think about. That's why I said earlier that like I literally spent a long time after reading this thinking about like shoot, we could literally be completely different people just based on one experience, one decision. And then you think about like what things shaped you as a person. And like, if you would have taken a different path, like it just, wow.
Yep.
So the last character we'll talk about here in this little character discussion is Amanda, and I'm going to let Barbara cover Amanda since she did pick her as the badass character.
So Amanda is in Jason 2's universe. She's a psychologist, and she works in his company as a psychologist for the people who come back and all that other stuff. And she's like the only person in this company that's not willing to do anything for this theory or this revelation that the magical box, you know? And so she decides that what they're doing is not okay to Jason 1, and she actually helps him out to try to go back to his universe, essentially. And her and Jason kind of have a thing because of like what they experience and what they go through. And I'm curious to know, like, is there a universe out there that they actually ended up together and all this? So once again, you start thinking about it, it's a whole thing. But she's essentially the only person that helped him out in Jason 2's world in that company that was doing this kind of experimenting. I liked her character.
Yeah, no, I did too. I thought she was a really interesting character, and she was actually probably a better fleshed out character than even like Daniela was in the book.
I think so. Yeah.
Like, I think, for example, like when this TV show comes out that he's writing, I think that Amanda will be a larger role than Daniela in that story.
I mean, I guess it just depends on what they do with the series or miniseries or whatever.
It's cool that the author is writing it, though. That is, I think, why I'm more excited about it. But Anyway, getting off track. Moving on from the characters, for you in this book, there's so many twists and surprises and what the heck moments as you follow Jason through all of this. What was the biggest surprise?
The whole thing. Like I said earlier, the multiverse concept was new to me. So like, I've not ever read anything with that plot. So that was a mind F for me. When he got kidnapped initially, I literally had no idea that it was going to be by another version of himself. I literally thought, oh, this is like one of my crime stories where it's just some stranger and we're going to figure it out. And the story is going to be about us finding out who the hell kidnapped him. And it kind of is, but not in that way. It was so far out of my realm of possibility. I did not even consider that it was another version of himself. So that was probably the biggest, just because that was the first. And then the shock value of the whole concept definitely, it continues to stick with me as I talk about it now. I was like, wait, what? It's himself? And then Barbara's over here texting me. She starts like freaking chapter 1. She's texting me. She's like, I think that he kidnapped himself and it's a multiverse. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I had no idea. But also, I mean, she's probably read books about multiverse.
I was going to say, Barbara's read a lot of books about time.
So I thought it was time traveling. This is technically not time traveling in the logical sense of what you think of time traveling, where you go back in time. Like, he can't go back in time. He can only go at the same time that he left. So, you know, like 4 months have passed since he's been away, then he's going to go to that same 4 months type thing. I don't even know if I'm explaining this correctly. So it's not time traveling. So I did get that wrong. I thought it was time traveling. But
yeah, she literally said, I'm a little into chapter 2, and I think the dude that drugged him and took him is the universe or time, but it's a version of himself. Like, they swapped places. Literally, like 10 pages into the book, Barbara's
it's not 10 because the chapters are very long.
Barbara already knows it's a version of himself. That's not wrong. You were wrong about the time traveling necessarily, but yeah. Oh wait, that same day she said it's gonna be a multiverse thing. Every decision we make creates a new world where that choice happened. I'm predicting this. Boom.
I'm telling you right now that we could Google like a list of the books with the biggest like mind Fs or twists and read it, and Barbara would probably predict the whole damn thing.
No, I don't think so. It's just this one was kind of my niche that I have weird obsessions and I go through phases, and I had an obsession with time traveling for a while there, and I read a lot of books. So
yeah, because she even said they swapped because the one who didn't have a wife but has the science stuff regrets it and wants that version of him that did have a wife to suck eggs and live his life.
It's just, now we're talking about the prediction thing, Barbara, I'm just curious, and you can cut this if you want to later, but you haven't read Fight Club. I think you watched the movie, though. Did you predict that Tyler Durden was entirely inside the narrator's head?
So for movies, it's actually harder for me to predict because movies are so instantaneous, whereas in books, I stop reading, I reread what I've read, I take notes. It's that kind of a thing. With movies, I can't do that unless I'm watching a movie by myself and like I'm stopping every 2 seconds and rewinding. And
I would have been curious to have you read Fight Club first before seeing it and see.
Yeah, so for books, it's just easier for me to theorize because I'm jotting my notes down, I'm marking pages, I go back and look at things. That's how I do it. And so for movies, I can't do that. And same with TV shows, like stuff that type of a media is much harder for me to predict because I kind of have to do it all in one sitting instead of being weird.
I just thought it was very impressive that after 2 chapters, Barbara's already got the whole damn
I'm always
book
impressed how fast and correctly she predicts things. But
anyway,
Barbara, why don't you tell us about the moment that was really surprising for you, if there was one?
Yeah, was there one?
There was, yes. So I should have realized that so many different versions of Jason would have made it back and then would want to be the one to have the OG life. Like that I didn't even consider. Like I thought the Jason we were following was going to be the only one who was going to make it back, and it was going to be a showdown between him and Jason 2. Never did I think, oh, actually, like the odds, while still slim, there's still going to be quite a few of them still making it back. And I think he even said like 50 or 60 of them made it back. So if you think like an exponential amount, 15, 60 still isn't a lot, but like my mind still can't wrap around the fact that I think 15, 60 is quite a bit. But anyways, I didn't think that
would have happened. I just thought like at max maybe 1 or 2 would have, but you know, obviously not quite a few of them popped up. So that I was not predicting him having to deal with the fact there's multiple versions of him that made it back. We're trying to get the children back, the wife, and it's, yeah, anyways. So no, I didn't predict that.
So not shockingly, the entire book for me was just full of surprises. I did not predict. I'm sure there were like small parts that I predicted, but nothing like what Barbara was capable of predicting. I do think, though, once it's kind of laid out, I agree with what Barbara said as far as there being like 50 plus versions of Jason. That I hadn't thought of. When they lay out like it's a multiverse and this is a different Jason, you kind of start putting all the pieces together. That was still genuinely shocking when you find out how many Jasons are in OG Jason's world trying to accomplish the same goal. That was pretty crazy. And a very well done twist, I think. This was good. Moving on from there, when the novel at one point switches to Daniela's point of view for the first time, were you surprised by the scene that takes place, confused? What did you think was happening?
No, I wasn't confused. My suspicions were confirmed. Essentially, when I got to that part, which I believe is chapter 3, that's when I was like, then yes, this has to be, my theory has to be at least somewhat right. But once again, I still thought it was time traveling, not, same wavelength traveling. I don't even know what to call that. Multiverse jumping in the right time. I don't know. But yeah, I thought that the one who took Jason was a time traveling Jason. So I was a little off on the time traveling aspect, but definitely confirmed that Jason 2 had taken over OG Jason's life. And I think the author did a really good dropping hints, because when Jason 1 was getting,
Abducted.
Right, I was gonna say kidnapping, but he's not a child. I think I even texted that to Lauren. I was like, "What is it called when an adult man is taken?" Adult napping, abducted is the word we're looking for here. So when he was abducted, like he dropped little hints of saying, like, "Oh, I recognize the way he's walking and his voice sounds similar," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Bro, that's you. That's a different you." So yeah.
So not surprisingly, again, I was super surprised and super shocked. I would say I was surprised and shocked first, and then like thoroughly creeped out about the fact that this Jason 2 was living OG Jason's life. And
so did you put it together when you got to that chapter, or you're like, what the heck had just happened?
So I think it took me a minute. Like when I got to that chapter, like it wasn't like immediately, it was like, oh, that's what it was. But like as the chapter carries on, that's when it became clear to me that this was like a different Jason, and then super creepy because this new Jason was like having crazy sex with his wife, and it was interesting. It was strange to think about, like when you see from her perspective, because she's talking about like how like in some ways like she was happy because this Jason was like the Jason that like the Jason at the beginning of their relationship when they were freshly in love, and like all this stuff, and the way he looked at her and the way he needed her and all this stuff. But then on the flip side of that, she knew though that something was off, because this wasn't like her Jason, like their connection was different, than it was deeper. It wasn't just this. And it was the same thing with Charlie too, when like he was like all of a sudden being like this grade A super dad, and Charlie on one hand was like, this is great, but on the other hand it's like, well, this is weird, this is my dad. But
I don't think he was a grade A super dad. He was actually, I think, cold towards Charlie.
I thought he seemed to spend more time.
No, he just wanted to bone his wife.
Yeah, essentially essentially like he was in the honeymoon phase of a relationship where all you want to do is like F like rabbits, essentially. And that's what this Jason thought. That's what his life was, in being in a relationship with someone having a child.
And Daniela was like, what's going on? Like, I'm enjoying this because like you haven't pursued me like this in a long time or whatever. So she was like, but she knew something was up.
Yeah.
And so, I was definitely surprised and confused. I know that's shocking about this situation. And I was still I think I put it together to an extent but I don't know. Like, I still was just like, what the hell is going on? It took me an embarrassing amount of time to figure out what was going on. But also, I've never been introduced to this concept of multiverses before.
Oh, yeah.
So now she's hooked.
Yeah, now I'm down for reading any more multiverse novels. But yeah, like I had heard of like, time traveling and all of that, but
Mhm.
I still didn't put together that that's what was happening because it was like happening at the same time. So I was just like, what
Yeah,
is
this is a
going
different
on?
take on time traveling because I think it's still considered time traveling in the sense, but it's like the multiverse version of time. Well, still not really time traveling because he's not
time
switching
traveling,
between
right?
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not until like they introduce, yeah. Maybe it was that chapter. So is that the part where like you figure out that he's in the science lab and like he's like we're looking at it, like you figure out that he kidnapped himself yet or no?
I was just say this is the chapter that was from Daniela's perspective, where
Yeah,
like
the first chapter of her point of
it's
view.
her interacting with Jason 2 in the original universe.
But we don't know it's Jason 2 yet at this point, right?
I mean,
Like
Not-
we don't know
not
that there's
officially.
multiple.
so the book has not
officially.
confirmed
Okay.
anything for
Correct.
you.
Yes.
So
The
I
book
did
has not
not.
said that.
Okay, so then this was at this point I still didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah,
I
because
was-
from her point of view, Jason is like hella late and bringing back the ice cream and stuff, and he's all like making out with her, and it's like, I want to go screw you, and that's what happens.
Yeah, so at this point I was just super confused as to like how there were two versions of himself and how like he got kidnapped, and then so I knew something obviously was off, but I was just very confused and surprised, and it was kind of like a what situation. So because I thought it was gonna like take a turn of we're gonna explore where he is, it's a disappearance and he's not gonna come back and she's gonna report him as a missing person and we're gonna search and figure out who the hell kidnapped him, and it's like, nope, this other version of him comes back and bones his wife. Like, what? Okay.
Yeah, I also, I think I got a better idea of what was happening after the chapter with Daniela's perspective, but it's still not as clear as Barbara's perspective was on the whole thing. Anyway, moving on to the next question. At its heart, Dark Matter is a love story. Yet we see Daniela in many different worlds and in situations where she is not with Jason and happy. Do you think that they are supposed to be together? And do you believe that they would have been just as happy pursuing their career-driven dreams? I think that's a really interesting question because like the idea that, you're like a soulmate out there and you're just supposed to be with them no matter what universe it is and no matter what happens in your life, I don't think is correct. I think that in the universes where they were together, where the cards fell the right way and the timeline lined up, then that would be great. And in the universes that they weren't, I think that it was clear. Well, okay, so I shouldn't say that Jason was happy, because the Jason that we met that followed his career and was super successful and said, F you to love and romance, and I'm leaning full tilt into science, he didn't seem happy. Like he was happy in a sense. Like I think that he was happy with the success that he'd found, and he was happy in that way, but there was something missing. And then you flip over to like OG Jason, and he has the family life, he's got the wife, and he has the son, and he has all of that. But I think that it's interesting because they have a similar perspective on it. Like in Jason number 1 has the family and the wife, and he has all these things, but he's in his mind he's just a college professor, and he kind of wonders, like, if I had leaned more into my research, like my friend that we meet in the first chapter, would I be in his shoes? Would I be more successful? Would I be the one, winning these awards? And so I think for both of them, they follow different paths, but they both feel like there's a part of them that's missing, part of that happiness token that's missing. And as the book kind of lays out, there was no way for them to have all of it. Like there was no way where Jason could have had the happy family life and been a super successful scientist and do all the things that Jason 2 did. And so it was a really interesting love story in that way to kind of look at like love and romance and happiness and what all of that means. So to get back to the question, I think that sometimes they were supposed to be together. I think that they were in a way just as happy pursuing their career different dreams. Daniela especially seemed very happy in her life where she was a super successful artist.
Yeah, I think that it's difficult because, like you said, there wasn't a world in which they could have both, which is a parallel for our world in a lot of ways. Like you end up making choices that takes your life in one direction or another, and you can't always have the best of both worlds, so to speak. Since you're literally considering every possible version of each of them, it's really difficult to say. Obviously, there are versions of both of them that might find happiness without the other one. So you just can't really say definitively. I feel like every version of Jason, though, is a bit extreme in their love for Daniela, even Jason OG. Like, and obviously, you love your significant other or whatever, but it's supposed to be romantic. But to me, it was a little creepy and off-putting. Not like, so OG Jason, I think, was the one that was the most genuine with his feelings of actual genuine love and regard and care. But then the other ones, it just was kind of creepy. Like, it was just it was too much, I feel like. And maybe it was just because of the magnitude of how many of them there were, or just the fact that they're like, we're gonna go murder everybody, to like, it was very off-putting to me for whatever reason.
He crossed the line from cute to psycho.
Right, there was a line, and that definitely got crossed. So, but I think that Daniela seemed happy when she was pursuing her career, and I think that it's just kind of a parallel for the fact that just because you do choose one path and you're happy there doesn't mean that if you would have chosen a different one, you would have been miserable. Like, there's endless possibilities for that situation, and they both could have chosen their careers and found somebody else and been just happy doing that. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I feel like that's a hard question to answer. In certain universes, they were made to be together, while in others, they clearly weren't. I don't think life is so black and white to say that you're supposed to be with just one person. I feel like that's kind of the whole soulmate thing. I feel like you have multiple soulmates. But anyways, I digress. Obviously, Jason too didn't feel that way, but I think there are other Jasons and Danielas that do feel happy or were happy. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to say one way or another.
So, and I think that's correct. Like Lauren said earlier, the book definitely gives you a lot to think on as you go through it. And it sounds like for all of us, some of those thoughts have stuck with us as we've left the book behind too. Moving on from there, what makes Jason number 1, or OG Jason, a standout among all the others? Is our allegiance to him a matter of perspective, or is there something fundamental to him that is more deserving of Daniela and Charlie than the other Jasons?
I feel like a huge part of this is that we're reading it from his perspective. So, kind of like I said earlier, we're automatically a little bit partial to him, because we can hear his thoughts and we can know his intentions and things like that. So I think we automatically know him more intimately and therefore lean in his favor. That being said, I do think that he was less deranged than the rest, like I kind of mentioned earlier. The rest of them seem to be out for blood and just a little psycho. And he seems to be more truly just loving his family, missing his old life, and wanting what's best for them. Not that there weren't other versions of Jason out there that didn't have pure intentions or didn't want what was best for the family. I think that it's really just a matter of perspective. Did I think he was more deserving than the others? Obviously, because you're partial to him, and I think it's written so that you are. I think it's intentionally written that way. Maybe not, but I think that maybe it was on purpose that we side with Jason OG.
Yeah, I think this is another hard question to answer. It's one of those that I was actually struggling with in my mind when I was reading the book. Because I think originally when he was debating all of this, because he was at one point debating in the book, am I more deserving than all these other Jasons and blah, 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 blah. I thought it was just a matter of perspective that we as readers were more into, or rooting for him, I should say, to end up, with the girl and the son. But I think after he proved that he literally just wanted the best for his family, and, originally he was going to be like, hey, meet here and we'll kind of hash it out, then whoever wins takes them. I think the other versions of this particular Jason, and we're not even talking about the other ones, the Jasons that made it back, I think they were more willing to risk his family's life, whereas this one wasn't. And so I think because of that, he was a bit more deserving. But it's still hard to answer for the ones that weren't violent and just wanted a shot, because we did kind of meet at the very end some of those where they're like, hey, we'll let you guys go through into the little box, because obviously there's a bunch of them camping out and waiting because the game plan, and they allowed him to do that. So it's still hard to say, what about them? Just because we don't get their perspective, maybe they are, just like this Jason, essentially, So this is a part that was really still a mind F for me when you really start thinking about it. And that's the part that I really was struggling with reading the book. And that's why I like the book, because of that.
Yeah, I agree. This was possibly the biggest mind F of the entire story when you start thinking about this. But I agree with both of you that I think we empathize with this Jason just because it's his perspective. And I think the best thing that Blake Crouch did in this book is that if you really start thinking about it, he could have written this story from any of those Jason's perspectives, even Jason number 2. And then we probably would have been most, into that person's perspective, just because that's the perspective that you're getting. And when you start thinking about that, it's crazy. The amount of like moments in this book are just like insane. And this is just a good example of that. But I 100% think that we see this Jason as the quote unquote, the right Jason, or the one that quote unquote deserves to be with Daniela and Charlie, just because he's the one we've been with since the beginning. Even though there's a lot of versions of Jason that have lived those exact same moments up until just one tiny little decision that split. I don't know. It's crazy. It's almost like such a large concept. It's hard to grasp, but it was really well done. I think that was one of the best things that he did in the book. So now we're getting to this. What did you guys think of the ending?
So I felt like the ending took the wind out of my sails. There's just too many variables left unanswered for me. Like, how would they survive in this universe? Would they kill their other versions and assume their life if there were versions of them in this universe? Like, how would they simulate in this universe without identities? Because this is, we're reading this in what would have been 2016. So it's like we have, identities. You can't just show up and be like, I don't know who I is. And you can't just, live your life. Like, that's not how it works. Back in, the 1900s, you could have done that, but not currently. So I think I also just wanted to know, like, what happens to them. And also, I also wanted to know what happened to Amanda. Like, I'm not going to lie, I would be very interested in a book about her adventures after she left and, like, what happened to her. So if he does a sequel, I hope it's, like, her perspective after she leaves Jason, because I was really invested in, I really enjoyed her character. So I don't know, it was just, that I think that's where the book fell a little short for me, was just the ending. But I think obviously he did that on purpose and left it ambiguous.
So I agree with Barbara that the ending was kind of, initially when I finished the book, it left a lot to be desired. And like, I felt like I wanted more, but like you just said, like, I think that was probably on purpose. And when you start thinking about the true breadth of this book and the story, in a way, it was the perfect ending, because the whole story has been like this effective journey into the literal unknown. And so for the book to end with him and his family reuniting, but stepping out into this unknown world that we don't get to see, and we don't get to know if they were happy, or like what were the Jason, Daniela, and Charlie like in that universe, or like Barbara said, like what happened to Amanda when she just decided to, like, there's so many storylines that are unanswered, but I think that was likely intentional, because this multiverse that we're seeing of this one person's life has all these different branching things and different things coming off of it. And so there was no way we would ever get the answers to everything. And so in a way, it was the perfect ending. And at the same time, I was mad because I wanted more. It was great.
Well, I'll be unpopular opinion. I liked the ending. Though I did feel like the author left it open for a sequel, like we talked about. It did leave things unfinished and unanswered, but I think that was by design. Because like you just said, like, you're never going to get answers and closure to all of the versions and the possibilities of what could have happened in this book, even with a sequel. Like, there's no way that we'll ever know about kind of, some of the questions that we might have. But I did enjoy that OG Jason ended up with his family, because I'm all about a happy ending. So
I hate to burst your bubble, Lauren, but the likelihood of a sequel is pretty low. The author has only ever written the Wayward's Pines trilogy. All of his other books have been standalones. He's never done.
No, I think that, but I'm happy with the way that it ended, though. So, like, I don't need a sequel. For me, it was a happy ending. He ended up with his family. Who knows where the hell they're going to end up.
But would you not want a book with Amanda? Like, that's the sequel I want. I don't really care about...
I would read a sequel. I would read a sequel if they wrote one. because I'm invested in the story at this point.
Yeah.
But do I feel like it could be a standalone like it is? Yes. Did it leave unanswered questions? Yes, but there's no way that we could have had closure for all of that. We could have maybe had a little more closure
True.
on Amanda.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
The Jason and there, that's fine. Like that's a good one cohesive story for them. Let's move on to Amanda.
Just tell us what happened to Amanda.
Just
damn it.
tell us.
Speaking of Amanda, without her, Jason 1 or OG Jason might not have survived. What do you think of her decision to leave? And how did you feel about their relationship? So I liked Amanda's character a lot. And in a way, I get why she left. Like I was frustrated that she left, but I also understand because to the Jason 1 or to the OG Jason, Amanda is a stranger. And she takes this huge risk. She blows up her life to help him escape and get back into the cube and try to find his family. And she goes through a lot with him, a lot of super dangerous situations. And she almost dies on that planet that's living in like a nuclear holocaust, like ice world. And so I think that she was hoping that he would choose to stop looking, and maybe he and her could, make a life in one of these many, many worlds. And it would be interesting to see that string of Jason, but I think that's why she left. And as far as their relationship, I think that there were hints of romance, maybe, but more on her side. I think that their relationship, as far as how they got close, was mostly because of the circumstance, and that they were together in this super traumatic, unstable situation where they were bouncing around different universes and different timelines. But I really liked her character. Like Barbara and Lauren were literally just saying, it would be cool to figure out what happened to her and what she ended up doing in this universe that she stayed in.
Yeah, I liked Amanda. She definitely saved his ass on several occasions. I agree that he probably wouldn't have survived without her. I don't know how I feel about her decision to leave. I kind of wish that she would have stuck it out, but I can't say I blame her. Honestly, he was dragging her through dangerous, unknown territory, and she was just like, all right, I'm peacing out. So I don't blame her. And I think that, any one of us would have made the same decision. But yeah, it would be nice to have some closure for her character. But I liked her character overall. Like we talked about whenever we did the overviews of the character. I think she just didn't have as much of an arc as I might have liked to see. But
so we do get a version of where she was lost in the snowstorm universe and he still made it back. But as far as Jason 1 surviving pre the box, entering the box, obviously there's worlds where he didn't make it without her. But so I do believe she played a huge role in OG Jason's survival in that sense. I feel like she did what was best for her, and realistically speaking, I think she was right to do so. She was clearly falling for him and was like, okay, I need to step back because at this point, it's never going to happen. So why am I doing this to myself? I'm not sure how I feel about a relationship as far as a romantic relationship. I liked her as a character, but I don't know about the whole maybe love potential for them together. I just want a story of her surviving in different universes, jumping around and stuff. But yeah, I don't really care about them as a real love relationship. But I like their friendship too. They essentially were each other's only support system, and obviously they were relying on each other. So I enjoyed that dynamic of it.
I'm sure there is a universe out there that they ended up together, but I can't.
He even mentions that. He's like, oh, I'm sure there's some universe where this Jason actually goes and kisses her and stops looking for his actual world or whatever. But I don't want to explore that.
Yeah.
It was sad, though, the moment you mentioned, Barbara, where he's talking to the other Jason, where Amanda didn't make it out of the ice world. Just another, there's so many just tiny little things that were so well done in this book. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Is there a path not taken that you wish that you could experience? If so, what is it? And do you feel you ultimately made the right decision? And so you could also answer this as if you were Jason 2 and you had the power, the tech was there to do this, to bounce around.
Okay, well, we didn't answer like that because that wasn't here. So,
I just put paths not taken is a dangerous subject to discuss without spiraling for a lot of people. My job as a counselor is literally to help people not spiral down that path in a lot of ways. So have I thought about it on occasion? Of course. Do I like to dwell on what if scenarios? No, it's not healthy. Like I said, I spend a lot of time with a lot of clients, discussing like regrets that people have and like talking through that. And it's a dangerous subject. So there are literally endless scenarios and loops that you would get lost in if you let your mind go there. I feel like, there's been plenty of times in my life where I'm like, oh, if I would have made this decision, what would that look like? Or if I would have, and it's just not healthy. So
since the other part of the question is super easy to answer, would you, if you had the tech, would you explore other timelines, or would you say, nope, I'm sticking in?
What do you mean by different timelines? Because like, if I could experience like, the Egyptian times and the Roaring 20s, then yes, I 100%. If you're talking about like my own life experience, if I hadn't done A and B, yes, that's a different answer.
That's what I'm talking about. So the literal machine that Jason 2 built lets you go between different universes at the same
time. But not back in time.
Not back or forward. So would you use that machine to go look at the what ifs in your
No, because literally you see in this story how you can easily screw up like your own timeline that you're in. So like, would I trade what I have right now so that I can go and see what life might have been like and risk screwing up and never being able to get back to the situation? Absolutely not. No.
Yeah, so I want to preface my answer in the sense that I feel like, yes, I think about this, but not in like a dangerous or way that like Lauren was mentioning. I think of more of, it's a reflection for me to always realize how I got here and for me to be happy with the choices that I've made or not made, I guess, depending on what I'm looking at, and to be, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, it's self-reflection to be, what is the word I'm looking for?
More cognizant, more...
No, like...
Appreciative?
Appreciative of what I have. Because, so, like, people who do spiral and think, oh, if I would have just done this, I could have been here. Like, I don't think that's healthy. But I also think that you should kind of reflect and be like, you know what? These are the choices that got me here, and look how far I've come. I think you should maybe do that just so you are happy with the choices that you've made and be like, you know what? Yes, that didn't happen the way maybe I originally wanted it to, but like, look how far it's gotten me in here. Anyways, do I do this? Maybe I'm a little weird because I do think about this kind of stuff, but not in that way of like, oh, I really wish I would have done that. I just think of like, life would be interesting had this been like this. But I'm also a very weird daydreamer. Like, I daydream about a lot of stuff. Like, if this happened to hear stuff, and that's how you get story ideas. But anyways, I digress. But one thing I always do think about, and it wasn't because I didn't make the choice was made for me, is where I would be if my parents hadn't immigrated to the US and I would have grown up in Brazil, because obviously my life would be completely different. Like, friends, family, like all of it, just my experience in life and growing up would be so different. That's just something I'm always like, I wonder what that would be like. I'm curious to know how that would be. I do think, like Lauren mentioned, like, I think you can drive yourself crazy thinking about all the paths not taken in your life, and you really shouldn't do it in that sense. But I do think you should reflect to realize like what you have in life and be grateful for those things, instead of being one of those people who thinks back and is bitter about the choices that you've made instead. As far as Michael's question, if I would do that, I think because I'm a very curious person as far as like that kind of sense, it would be interesting just kind of to see like what I was able to accomplish in other things. But I don't think I would ever look at it as I'm jealous or I wish I would have done that. It's more of just, I'm so curious. I'm a very curious person by nature. So I like to know the what ifs if I could. So to have that in my grasp. But like, if the choice was, you can do this, but you're risking the chance of, like Lauren said, messing up my current timeline or not ever being able to go back, then I wouldn't. That, to me, that's not worth it. But if you were to tell me like, hey, you can pay $5 and you can see what version 2.122 would have done, then I'd be like, oh, cool. Like, I would love to know, like, maybe in a different universe, I'm more artsy because I've never had that gene, but maybe somewhere else, like, life happened and I turned into like this cool painter. Like, that would be cool to see that I had that in me. And then I could be like, oh, hey, you do have that in you.
Do you feel like, though, if you did that, that you would have less satisfaction with your current life?
No,
You'd
because
be thinking about...
I've never felt that way. Like there's a lot of stuff that I've chosen to do, and you have to live with that. I don't think I would feel unsatisfied. I think if anything, I'd be like, you know what? Like a part of me always thought I could do this, and it's nice to know and get that the validity of knowing that I had it in me. It just my life didn't put me towards that route,
I will say that you are the exception to the rule for most
Oh, really?
people. Yeah. Most people would struggle with that and then go back to their normal life and not be content and then constantly be chasing the things that they thought that they could have. So you are a rare bird.
No, I've never thought that. If anything, it's just like, yeah, like F you to everyone else who said I couldn't do it because another universe of me did, But.
So for me on this one, there isn't necessarily like a specific path that I wish I could experience. I think that
not dating me.
Yes, I wish I could look at what my life would be like if I had never met Barbara.
I'm just kidding.
But I think
your self-esteem might be better. No, I'm just kidding.
Ouch. You're no cakewalk either, Lauren. You tease him just as badly as I do.
Oh, I'm totally kidding.
What would life be like if my parents had
Michael's
only had
self-esteem
one
would be
kid?
What would Michael's life be like if Barbara and Lauren didn't always berate him on the podcast?
If mom and dad only had me and I never met Barbara, what would my life be like? Anyway.
He spirals.
So no, there's nothing like that. Unlike Barbara, I agree with Lauren that can be a dangerous spiral to start digging into what ifs. And it's interesting. So the other part of this question that I posed initially, I thought kind of like Barbara did, it'd be interesting to see, different versions of yourself. But I started thinking about it, and I think that Jason 2 created this machine not with the intention at the outstart of going and getting into somebody else's life and taking it over. I think that happened because he went and explored different timelines and he saw something that he didn't have that he thought would make him happy, and ended up blowing up the world over it effectively. And so no, I would not use the machine. I think if this question was, would I use a time machine, it would be yes. Because I think that would be
obviously, I already told you my answer would be a yes on that one.
But for this, it's going to be a no, because I think that, Jason 2 was probably relatively happy in his life. And then he did this and that changed everything for him. And
I think it depends on the person that you are. Like Lauren said, like if you're one of those people who is just going to spiral and be like, I could have had that life and now I'm going to steal somebody else's life. Like, no, that's not worth it to me. To blow up your own life, if that was my choice, then I'd be no. I would never say yes to that.
Yeah. Anywho, moving on from there. Obviously, the ending of the book, we already talked about a little bit, is they're in the box and they're trying not to be followed. So they have Charlie open the door because, in theory, Jason 2 doesn't know Charlie and doesn't have a Charlie that he can use to get to this new world. And it's described to us, the science of the box is that the world takes you to somewhere based on the person who opens the door. And so all we see is Charlie opens the door and the book ends. And so what, if anything, did you envision is behind that door? What world did they walk into?
I'm not really sure I imagined a particular world, just more of like how they would simulate in this universe. And I kind of already got into that whole like issue there. But so I'm hoping that they found a universe similar to theirs, that they could live peacefully in what they want in their lifestyle or whatever. But it would be also cool, like if they were like a futuristic world, that would be kind of interesting to see. But just, I didn't really picture anything. Hopefully it's a cool universe for them and it's not like molten lava or something.
That would suck. You finally get your wife and kid back, and then you walk into a universe like a
immediate death.
That'd be awful.
So I, like Barbara, didn't really think about what the universe was, but I did think about like she also mentioned like all the issues they would have just because of all the issues that the characters run into previously. So I think once I started thinking about that, I started thinking like, okay, so this universe is probably going to have another Jason, Daniela, and Charlie. So what are your choices there? You either take out your people that live in this universe and take over their lives. Option B is the one that I pictured when I read the book, which was that they probably would go somewhere not in the United States and live more off the grid to have an enjoyable life, but never cross paths with the other versions of themselves.
I mean, if you think about it, you were a 15-year-old boy once. Like, what do 15-year-old boys think? Like, would it be like a weird porno set or something?
A world where everyone's having sex all the time.
Like, that's the kind of, like, you have to kind of think of that. Like, what?
I didn't think about that. No.
What a 15-year-old boy thinks about. Like, what? Like, would it be like a cool, like, all the world is a water world? Like, that would be kind of interesting or something like that,
I think if anything, in that moment, Charlie was dealing with a lot of trauma as to what just happened in his life.
Right. Can you imagine then, like, a crappy world?
If he's thinking about that, and he's thinking about how they need to escape and they need to be away from people, then it might be a relatively desolate world.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Who knows? I don't know. There's lots of different ways you can go with this, including lava world. But, but yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
I just put a happy one. And I think that, like, I just imagine them getting to go back to a universe that was pretty much like where they started. Was kind of what I had pictured in my head, like that they get to live happily ever after, and they get to go back to their and not even like exactly like their old life, but basically that they get to go back and kind of be a family again and not have to worry about all of the nonsense.
Yeah, so we finally got to the point of the podcast.
Oh, look, Michael, we made your math so easy and there's no decimals.
Our individual scores. You did. It's true.
This is the first time this has happened? Or not?
I think it happened one other time.
No, where we all matched the same score.
I think it's happened one other time.
Oh.
But yeah, so I guess we don't have to go side by side or one by one, since they already have said the math was easy and it was all the same. And if you remember, our group score was an 8, so each of us did give this book.
Actually, picked a 7.99, but
Barbara is fired and is no longer going to be part of the podcast from this week forward.
There's another universe where Barbara's not part of the podcast, and Michael and I just murder each other.
Anyway, so our group score on this was an 8. We all gave it an 8. I think it's pretty evident based on everything we've said so far that we all really liked this book. So much so that I think we've all talked about reading more books by this author. I've already read a couple by him because I read the Wayward Pines books, but it'd be interesting to read some of the other ones that he's written too. Make sure you're following Badass Literature for free in your favorite podcast app. Give us a rating and leave us a review if you can. It's super important. It lets our podcast get seen, and it might listen to by more people. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Our username is BadassLitPod on both Instagram and Facebook.
So if you have any feedback about today's episode, you can contact us by writing to badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. You can also send us a DM or leave a comment on Instagram or Facebook.
Thank you so much for listening to our first episode of Season 4. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
Bye.
Bye.